What's going on, guys? It's Mike for SimRacing604 and welcome to version 1.7 of Assetto Corsa Competizione. As with any significant update, the focus will be on the new content, in this case 3 new tracks, which I will cover later in the video, but there are some significant changes to ACC overall that are worth talking about, so that's where I'm going to start. And it's also worth noting that this is currently only applicable to PC. The console version of this update is expected to be released sometime this spring, and this update and DLC only adds tracks. Contrary to what you might have read, there are no new cars here, and the full changelog will be linked in the description, but here are some of the major takeaways of this update. So the big news, and again I'll cover this in more detail later, but it's the addition of the British GT Championship. The full season, including 3 new tracks, is DLC, but many of the features are available to all ACC users, which is amazing. You can run the British GT season, including liveries and base content tracks, in single player mode. To get the full season, including Donington, Oulton Park and Snetterton, you will need to buy the DLC, the price of which at the time of this writing isn't known, but you can click the link in the description to find out as soon as Kunos and 505 make it known to the public. And there's a huge add to this mode. We now have single player multiclass. This is something I've been wanting for a long time, and I even talked about it being conspicuously absent in the review video from last week that I did. And I'd love to think that Kunos actually watches my videos and takes what I say seriously, but in fact it came down to Kunos being true to the real world seasons. But either way, now we have it, and it's amazing. You can just choose the British GT season from the race menu, and then your single player races at any of the tracks are multi-class. There was also tweaks to the AI, including better wet weather behavior and improved blue flag responses to complement the multi-class racing. One of the most requested bug fixes from previous builds was improvements to the multiplayer lobby UI, and Kunos has made improvements on that front. I didn't get to test it fully since I've been running a beta version of ACC, but very soon I should be able to test it with my league races. The multifunction display has also seen improvements, but the biggest UI improvement for me is the adjustable mirror field of view. Well done, Kunos. On the physics side, maybe the most notable change is the ground collision effects have been improved. This update brings yet another round of balance of performance tweaks to ACC, including British GT balancing, and there's also been a number of physics improvements for wet weather conditions, along with some stabilization of the weather variability. And finally, in terms of graphics and sounds, there's nothing really going to make a huge difference to most users, but there are some improvements, of course. You can follow the link in the description to read more about it, but real-time contact shadows have been added, along with changes to asphalt shaders, skid marks, and dash displays in a few of the cars. The audio improvements are really just tweaks, but the cool new addition is the airplane noise for Paul Ricard and Donington. How's that for track detail? Alright, on to the part of the video that most of you have probably already skipped ahead to. Welcome to the British GT DLC tracks. Donington, Oulton Park and Snetterton. It shouldn't be a surprise at this point, but the tracks Kunos have brought us are incredible. From the windy, legendary downhill section of Donington to the bouncy Sebring-like surfaces of Oulton Park to the razor's edge final corners of Snetterton, the British GT DLC brings us the best version of these tracks in any sim. I've had a week with these tracks now, and I'll slip in a little thank you here. Thank you so much to the Kunos team for involving me behind the scenes with these releases. I don't know how a gray-haired man playing video games in his garage in Canada could ever find himself grouped with the likes of James Baldwin and David Perrell, but all I can be is humble and thankful for these opportunities. So back to the tracks themselves, and we'll start with Donington. In recent years, Donington has crept into my top 10 favorite circuits, so I was beyond happy to hear that Kunos was taking this track on, and boy did they nail it. Again, I approached this review as a fan of the track, having driven it in many sims over many years, and this is easily the best and most detailed version I've driven. Everything seems to be represented accurately here, based not only on what I've seen in other sims, but also based on real racing coverage from that track. And yes, the cones can be punted. So your lap around Donington starts with a long right-hander known as Red Gate that's a little bit sharper than 90 degrees and increasingly pitched downward, which can easily upset the car. You're then entered into possibly the best corner complex outside of Eau Rouge Radillon, accelerating downhill while slaloming the successive corners of the Craner curves before breaking into a deceptively difficult right-hander. Past the right-hander begins an uphill climb where twice you'll have to set up for blind entry corners known as McLean's and Coppice. Once you pass that, you'll get a brief reprieve and fade the car to the right to set up for a medium speed chicane. Not long after the chicane, a slow hairpin is the first of two such corners before the end of the lap. The back-to-back hairpins, known as Melbourne and Goddards, are just the 10th and 11th corners of the lap, so the whole lap takes less than 90 seconds in a GT3 car, but it's 90 seconds of pure driving pleasure. And next up, another favorite of mine, Oulton Park. I've driven this track for years, with my first sim racing memories here being from the first project cars, and more recently I spent hours and hours racing here in AMS2, with Oulton Park possibly being the best track in that title, but this version is somehow even better than that. In fact, I've never been able to share a favorite track from Competizione since the level of quality is so balanced, but this is it for me. Not only is it the best track in this title in my opinion, but also among the best that I've driven in sim racing ever. And much of that greatness comes down to the layout. It fuses high and medium speed corners with two very cleverly placed chicanes and a banked hairpin that can be taken a lot faster than you might expect. And the track also has gentle elevation changes. This alone would make for a great driving experience, but there's something else at play here, more so than any other circuit in ACC, and that is the uneven driving surfaces here. They make for a very rough lap and require you to constantly adjust and catch your car, not unlike the excellent Sebring circuit in R-Factor 2. This is the best display of vehicle physics and wheel force feedback in Competizione. My first drive here was after a terrible night's sleep and I was in a bad mood, but I decided to give the track a shot in the Bentley, and after about 2 minutes I could hardly wipe the smile from my face. Driving here is absolute sim racing bliss, and this track alone is reason enough to buy this DLC. Let's go on board for a lap. Your lap at Oulton Park gets difficult almost right away. The first right-hander is a very difficult one to judge, and running too wide or too narrow on exit is easy to do. From there, there's a gentle kink to the right that bends downhill, making vision difficult, and the next corner is Cascades, a 90-degree left-hander that allows you to carry lots of speed. This speed continues to increase as you approach turn 4, Island Bend. This will be a test of courage, as you want to carry as much speed as possible through here, but it's not quite flat. From this crescendo of speed, you'll need to brake hard for the Shell Oil's hairpin. It's banked, so you can take it comparatively fast. From there, you're approaching the first of two successive chicanes. Britain's is the first, then a short straight later, you're at Hyslop's. Be very mindful on the exit of Hyslop's, as the exit curb is abrupt and can easily upset the car or even puncture a tire. Turns 10, 11, and 12 come in rapid succession, but 13 and 14 are gentle left bends as you approach Druids. Druids is about as much fun as you can have in a corner, with a wide exit that challenges you to carry more and more speed with each lap. The last corner of note is turn 16, Lodge Corner, which is slightly tighter and slower than Druids, and it rises over a crest, which limits visibility. From there, an easy left kink known as Deer Leap is the last official corner before you cross the line to end your lap. And lastly, we have Snetterton. This is the circuit I was least excited about, but it's still masterfully done here in ACC. By comparison, it's flat and has less variation in the corners, but the track could never be confused with boring racing. In fact, it has a history full of amazing moments in motorsport, not least the emergence of the immense talent of Ayrton Senna here in the early 80s, and the start-finish straight here even bears Senna's name. And speaking of names, Snetterton opened up naming to its fans a decade ago, and now many big names from the world of motorsports have had their names infused with Snetterton. Among those with corners named after them here include Lewis Hamilton, Martin Brundle, Frank Williams, and Murray Walker. Let's go on board for a lap. So your lap at Snetterton begins about halfway down the Senna straightaway before going into the relatively fast right-hander known as Riches. You're then set up for the tightest corner on the circuit, a 180-degree hairpin called Montreal. Out of Montreal, you gain speed, which has to be almost immediately tempered before you enter the left-hander. Another short straight after that leads you into the Agostini hairpin, which is a tough corner to get right. It feels like it goes on forever, and nailing the exit takes some practice. The next left is a high-speed corner named after someone called Hamilton, but your speed is sharply reduced going into Augies. Out of Augies, Sir Frank Williams corner is a right-hander that precedes a long and wide straight. This is your last chance to take a breath and gather yourself before an extremely difficult final sector. You'll slow the car gently through Brundle before slamming on the brakes entering Nelson. Nelson is slow in and fast out. From there, you'll slow the car through the eerily named Bomb Hole. From there, you're challenged to push the limits of your grip through Coram, which is a right-hander that goes on and on. At some point, the final corner will come into view, which is a 90-degree left-hander called Murray's. So there you have it, folks. 3 amazing circuits to complement a significant update, which itself complements a racing sim that I consider one of the greatest ever, and certainly the definitive GT3 and GT4 simulator. Enough listening to me. Head over to Steam and get these tracks. You will not be disappointed in the slightest. Thank you so much for watching.